Hi, this is John Krasinski, Pittsburgh Soccer Now. We're here on Pittsburgh Sports Live with our Pittsburgh Riverhounds USL Championship preseason preview 2022 season preview, really. It's going to be extravaganza. We're going to get right to it. We're going to go rapid fire. With me around the panel here, I feel like we're on around the horn, that sort of thing. It looks like if you're looking at the screen, Jordan Smith is is over there, the Brady Bunch style. Matt Popchak and Mark Goodman, soccer rabbi. Great to have all of you here. One Forum 2022 is ready to go, and we've got some really some predictions we want to get to right off the bat. So I'm going to go right to you, Mark. And we're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and predictions. How many points do you see the Riverhounds reaching this season, and where do you think they'll finish in the Eastern Conference standings?
This is always the hardest question because you have to remember that USL has changed the number of games, and the team has kind of bounced back and forth. I've always been kind of bouncing between like 54 and 59 points as an overall, generally sensing that the team can be very good. It feels like 60, 61 is like an upper limit. And basically the question is this team like one of the better Riverhounds teams in the last couple of years? And I'm going to say yes, they look very, very good. There are a few strange additions to the Eastern Conference. There are some strange subtractions because of the move to MLS Next Pro, which is a mouthful to say. And some of the teams we used to like to beat up on, like Philadelphia Union 2, are no longer there to be beat up, although the Red Bulls are still there, so go figure. But I guess I'll come in at even 61. That feels about good.
Okay. Matt Popchak, you're up.
I'm going to be a little bit more bullish and say 68. I'm going to say 68, John, just in case our feed hiccuped and he didn't quite catch me the first time there. So hopefully the second time was the charm. But I'm going to be a little bit more bullish than Mark and say 68. With that in mind, I do think that the preseason darlings of the Eastern Conference that everybody else thinks are the preseason darlings of the Eastern Conference, I think that those teams are the teams that we think they are. Tampa's going to be up there. Louisville's going to be up there. Birmingham should be pretty good again, but I do tend to agree that this could be the best team, at least under Bob Lilly, that the Riverhounds have assembled. I think the proof has been in the pudding in the preseason. I mean, we're talking about a perfect, or at least near perfect, with a one-draw preseason. How many times have we been able to say that in the Highmark era? So it seems like this team is even more ready than usual to put its money, figuratively speaking, where its mouth is, and deliver on some of that promise. So I'll go in the neighborhood of like 19, 20-ish wins, maybe 9 or 10 draws, or 8 to 10 draws, whatever the first grade math works it out to. But yeah, 68 points and one of those top 3 or 4 spots seems like a good place for them, all things considered.
Jordan.
Yeah, I'm with Matt. I'm a bit more bullish. I don't want to sound like a homer, but I do think the team is looking a lot better this year than last. I mean, I like the additions that the Hounds made, and by looking at Twitter and stuff throughout the division, I didn't really see any big additions to the other teams. Like, I didn't see the Hartford Athletic or Tampa Bay Rowdies or the Miami FC get anyone huge. Us getting Dane Kelly and Arturo and some of these people, it's going to be really interesting. So, I mean, we'll see how it happens. They all got to get chemistry, but I'm thinking around 65 points. That was just like my gut feeling. I don't know if they're going to be first in the East, first in the whole USL, but I think they're going to be close. They might drop some points, drop some gains from just being a very defensive team under Lilly and not being able to score here and there. But I think they'll be close to winning the division. Last year they were like 10, 11 points behind Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be closer this time.
And, I'll wrap it up and I'll say, I was thinking in the ballpark of the lower 60s, just because of the competition, at least on the top half of the Eastern Conference. I think it's pretty strong enough that it's going to take a maximum effort every time out to beat the top 3 or 4 teams, whoever they are there, and whoever they end up being. We're all sitting here and we'll talk about USL Championship in a little bit. Louisville's, the Tampa's, the Miami's tough, Birmingham. So there's a good 4, 5, 6 teams, I think, that will, if everything clicks their way, and the type of depth and the teams that, Bob Lilly said in preseason interview that he feels there's so many teams in USL have really stepped up in terms of depth, maybe not the big name talent that's out there, but so I think that just in terms of the competition, I think will be tough. But there's, on the other end of it, and I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming article prior to Saturday, probably post on Friday, USL Championship. I think once we see the subtraction of Loudoun United, New York Red Bulls, and Atlanta too, probably, although they seem pretty talented, at least all of them do have its pieces. I don't know if they can't really put it together for 34 games, those teams. So my point is that I think USL is becoming leaner, more quality, less quantity in terms of teams. So I think that's where they're going. But this year, I think the Hounds will feast off of the quantity. In other words, all these extra games against those type of teams. I think that this Hounds team, I don't expect, unlike last year, losing to a game like at Loudoun, that sort of thing. So I do expect over 60 points, and I do expect them to finish in the top 2. That's kind of where I see it. All right, so let's move on. Next question, really, all of you, let's go in reverse. Jordan, which new player that you've seen on the roster are you most interested in seeing this year?
I'd say Arturo. For those that don't know, he's from Spain and played for Pitt for a few years. Great center back in the ACC. I'm really interested in him because I don't know if he's going to get tons of playing time, or like if he doesn't, I'll be interested to see why. Is he not ready yet? Or if he does get in there, is he going to really fit and be dominant? I think he can be. Shane Wheat was just out of college and he was a pretty good player. So Arturo is my answer.
Matt.
This is going to sound like the easy, fun, feel good answer, but I don't think there's too much need to galaxy brain it. I'm going to say Dane Kelly. And I don't think that it can be said enough just how much that offseason signing floored me. I mean, for Pittsburgh to go out and get an impact player like that. And, we sort of talk amongst ourselves, and we've gotten to do it in our soccer sound offs at times about just, what is ownership going to do to get the team over the clearly defined humps that they still have to get over, just in terms of the playoffs and having playoff success and finally getting that championship, but that hopefully Bob will be good enough to lead them to sooner than later. And to go out and sign an impact player like that, really, to me, just was an eyebrow raiser. I've been very high on seeing this guy in black and gold kit since he got here, just knowing what his resume in the league is. And I think he gives this team a tremendous amount of depth up front that it maybe didn't have before. And not having depth in certain areas is something that kind of hurt the team the last time they were trying to go on a lengthy playoff run a couple of years ago. So very excited to see if the Great Dane can be great still, as it were.
And I think the fact that your point was just well made, that Albert Dikwa injury last year, I think really did affect him. But Mark?
Yeah, you guys picked really good choices, but this is one of those kind of talk show formats where saying the same thing as the last guy doesn't make any sense. In preseason, the guy that I got a good look at in the match that I went to was Toby Sims. He's out of England. He's a young player. He played for the Hounds mostly at right back. Bob's been mixing and matching a lot between the fullbacks and the defensive midfielders, which is really interesting. We'll talk more about it, but Danny Rivera seems to be more likely to be playing defensive mid than he will be playing wide, but it's Bob, so he might switch it mid-season. He may change the formation multiple times. Sims looked really, really good at being a defensive right wing back or a defensive right back in kind of a 4-back format. And what in the games that I watched, it looked like Bob was maybe tinkering with going back to 4 at the back again. So that might be really interesting. It's also just really unclear who the team is going to be starting at fullback. I think there's a lot of possibility there. There's some really experienced center backs. I think the midfield is almost certainly locked down, and so are the forwards. The biggest question on this roster is who's going to start at left back and who's going to start at right back. And I thought Toby Sims got a lot of time. He looked very good. He's young. He's exciting. This is maybe the beginning of a long, successful career in USL for him.
Yeah, and then Robbie Dambrot is, he's played a lot of minutes, so it'll be. I think the competition for all these positions is going to be great. It's interesting. Again, kind of to follow you up, Mark, in the same theme is that, I mean, I think Dane Kelly and Arturo and obviously, all of these guys, I think are all I'm excited to see. But I think the one guy I'm thinking a lot about is a young player. I was surprised they picked up a 20-year-old, another Trinidad Tobago product. This one, Jesse Williams. And Mark, I think you saw him play a little bit more. He didn't play in the pit scrimmage, so I didn't get a chance to see him in person. But I've heard a lot of really good things. He's only 20 years old. He started in Trinidad Tobago's last friendly. That's interesting. It's going to be interesting. How do you fit in a player like that? And it's a center back grouping. I know from what I understand, Arturo Ordonez was in competing for starting time minutes. And he was getting a good look at the end of the preseason there. So that it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Jesse Williams. We know Mikhail Williams. We know Jelani Peters. They have obviously asked strengths that they bring to the table. And Bob talked a lot about at the beginning of the preseason, talked a lot about how, Peters, Mikhail Williams, and Shane Wheat were playing very well together. So I think he starts out the season with that, but I think he can roll out Arturo. He can roll out Jesse Williams. These guys, one of the top defensive players in the country from Marshall, Nathan Dos Santos. Another Dos Santos returning is going to be an interesting addition as well. All right, so let's look at our next topic here and thing to address with the Riverhounds. Who do we think? And let's try to go around quickly. Leading scorer. So Mark.
Leading scorer has got to be Dane Kelly. I mean, he's the guy you brought in with the big money. He is the leading all-time scorer in USL. He's going to want to tack on a few more goals this year and really establish that record and put it over the top. So, if anybody is going to go a different direction, I would love to see it, but I think we can expect 10, 12 goals out of Dane Kelly this year.
Matt.
Well, funny enough, 10 and 12 is around what I was going to say was my prediction for Dane Kelly's goal total. Now with exactly. Great minds. Now, with that in mind, I think a certain Mr. Cicerone is going to get that pepperoni still. I think Russell is going to.
I like that.
Yep. No, I think last year was not a fluke. I think that Russell Cicerone is that good, and he certainly had a fine preseason, as has Dane Kelly. I think those two are going to thrive together. And I think if you look at last year when Russell was sort of in the hunt for the golden boot, he kind of tapered off that last month or so of the season. I got to wonder, does he think about that at all? Is that going to be, a little extra motivation for him maybe this year? I think he ends up leading the team again, but I think Dane is going to be right behind him.
Jordan.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what either of you said. Dane Kelly is a safe option, but I think it'll be Russell Cicerone. I think he's going to push for over 15 goals. But we'll see. I mean, if both of them score a lot, I'm fine with that. So
And so is Bob Lilly. Bob Lilly said, well, he said if he wants Alex Dixon to score 10 and Russell scores 10 and he wants Dane Kelly to score 10 and he wants
yeah.
5 guys to score 10. So he wants to light it up this year. But I think maybe there's a secret thing in play here. Let's see what happens with Wyatt this year early in the season. So Wyatt Borso, Riverhounds Academy product, a forward who's actually looked really good in preseason. From what I've seen, he's looked really good. Hey, he starts scoring goals for the Hounds. Maybe they just sign him to a pro contract and help the crosstown Pitt Panthers out, because then Pitt won't have to face Wyatt Borso a few times over the next few years. Because anything to take some steam out of that Notre Dame attack, I think Jay Vidovich would appreciate. That was definitely a thorn in Pitt's side. But anyway, my point, I mean, yeah, I actually think I kind of lean towards the balanced scoring. And I think probably Russell, with the way that they play, I think the target guys are going to do a lot of the dirty work. And I think that includes Dane Kelly. I think Dane will also not start every game. I think there's a certain level of where there's going to be workload management. And I just have a feeling that I think Russell, younger players, he's always looking to get through the lines. He clicks so well with Dixon and Forbes, and they kind of anticipate each other so well. And I think Russell ends up maybe just a goal or 2 or 3 ahead of maybe Dane. And I think Deke was poised to have a good year. And I think there's going to be some shared workload between Deke and Dane Kelly. Because I think one thing Bob's banking on is having this team healthy and ready for the playoffs. All right.
Don't you think this team could play a 4-3-3? Bob will never do it, but
it's great point. And I think it depends on the opponent, but I think he's always going to have that defensive mindset in terms of where do you start with your formation and build out. Right. So let's kind of wrap this Riverhounds side up. I'm going to go real quick. This is like 3 or 4 things. Just give me your thoughts. Just one player. So we wanted to know who the leading goal scorer was. What about assists, minutes, fouls and yellow cards, and clearances? Just kind of throw those out there and see if you can just give me your thoughts on those. Jordan, you first.
Assists, it'd be smart to pick Alex Dixon again. Could be Danny Griffin if he's more in like an attacking mid kind of role. If Danny Griffin's back in the 6, I would choose him for minutes played once again. For most minutes played, he was in the top 5 last year, I believe, in the USL. So he rarely came out. Clearances, Shane Wheat was up there in the top 5, top 10 last year in the USL. He might have fallen out towards the end because I think they started to rest him a bit more, but he was up there in clearances at one point. And then the other one was fouls.
And yellow cards, kind of 2 and 1.
I'm gonna go with Danny Rivera because I feel like he would get the most cards, especially if he's playing in the 6. I don't know. That's my guess.
Good. Interesting point.
Yeah.
Matt.
For assists, I'll go with Alex Dixon, who's been a fantastic playmaker in the year that he's been here. Especially if there's more games against Hartford, his old team. I like him he seems to like tormenting those guys, but I digress. But I'll go Dixon for assists. For minutes played and possibly fouls, I'll go with King Kenny. I'll go with Canardo, potentially in both. If I have to pick another one for fouls, I might be inclined to pick somebody like Danny Griffin, who, like Jordan said, is sort of an Iron Man all over the field and is also a candidate for most minutes for that matter. And clearances, I'll second another thing that Jordan said. I'll say Shane Wheat. And to his point, the clearance that saved Danny Vitiello's clean sheet against Charlotte at Highmark Stadium last year was, for my money, one of my favorite plays of the entire 2021 season. Not just because it saved the win, but because to me, that most personifies what I think that Bob thinks the identity of the team should be when the team truly is on its best day. It was just an unbelievable hustle defensive play, and I'll not forget it anytime soon. And hopefully we'll see a few more of those this year.
Well, hopefully not if they're defending better.
No, good point.
Mark.
Assists, I'm gonna go with Russell Cicerone. He had 8 last year, and he was second. And I feel like that. I think you're right that like going 4-3-3 is really unlikely, but we have seen a front three a little bit this season of Cicerone on the left, Dixon on the right, and Dane Kelly in the middle. And that's like so much exciting firepower. Like, how do you not start that lineup at some point in the season? And if you start that lineup, how do you not go 4-3-3 to do it? So, which leads me to the next thing, which is minutes and fouls is probably going to be Danny Griffin, because he's kind of like the pit bull for the team. He's just running around causing problems, causing mayhem all day long. Clearances, I mean, I want to go with the tallest guy on the team just because that seems like logic. And that would be Jelani Peters at 6'6". I want to go with Arturo Ordonez because he was Pitt's like clearance boss for the men's team in the years that I watched him. But I think you guys are probably right that in terms of like which of the center backs is likely to get the most minutes and kind of come in and play the most, it's probably Shane Wheat. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump right into mine, and I actually think Shane is going to be the minutes leader this year. I think Bob's all about load management for the midfielders and the forwards this year. Although the same applies with the center backs and the defenders. I mean, you've got 10 defenders, you got 4 outside back, flex guys, and then you have you can play 6 different center backs. I think there are at least 4 or 5 or 4 of them have proven to play at this level. 2 are very promising. So I think there's a chance that Shane does, just because of his week in, week out durability and reliability. I think he could be the minutes leader. As far as assists go, I got to stick with the king. I mean, I can't believe none of you mentioned Kenardo Forbes. I thought he got off to a slow start last year in all sense in terms of attacking. I don't know if it was because he didn't quite find that where he really fit with last year's team until the second half of the season, and then that's when he really started to get involved, and he really got involved in the offense. I thought that was, and I think if he starts the season off in that role, and just doing his thing, I think he could have double-digit assists this year. So he's obviously the best all-time leading assist man in the USL. So I think that would count for something. One guy we haven't mentioned yet, another minutes leader for high minute totals for Charleston Battery last year is Angelo Kelly. He came to the Hounds. His full name is Angelo Kelly Rosales, but he's going to be wearing Kelly only on his jersey, from what I understand this year. So Angelo Kelly Rosales, astounding number of yellow cards and fouls. So he's already booked in his statistics over the last 3 or 4 years in USL Championship. So if he gets the minutes, which again, challenge, who's he gonna bump? Danny Griffin? Is he gonna bump? I mean, who's he gonna bump for playing time? But he is definitely someone capable of getting a lot of fouls and yellow cards. So I just figured I'd throw him in there. And then clearances, yeah, I think it's Wheat. I really do think he'll probably be the guy, but depending on how many minutes Jelani Peters plays and Mikael Williams, but I think it's probably going to be Wheat. All right, so we've wrapped up the Riverhounds predictions. Let's jump into the USL Championship real quick. Here's a real quick fun one. Who finishes dead last? We were talking about some of those teams that again, no knock on any of those franchises, but I mean, there's one of them has to finish dead last. Jordan.
I'm gonna say Loudoun United, just because I don't know. They only had 4 wins last year, so I'm gonna say them. But the Riverhounds will find a way to lose to them again or tie them. But, so
you're going out on a limb. We will tell. Don't tell Bob you said that. We will take that from them.
I didn't say it.
Don't tell whoever's on deadline you said that either.
Yeah.
Matt.
Jordan actually beat me to the punch. My instinct tells me it's going to be Loudon. And for the record, well, you guys probably recall this. I was nice to Loudon last year. I said that they were going to be, kind of a sleeper team, maybe a playoff team. That prediction aged like milk, and may they rot in hell for it. No, but kidding aside, I do think it's going to be Loudon at the bottom of the barrel.
Mark?
This could be wishful thinking because, Red Bull 2 was really bad last year. They weren't as bad as Loudon, but they were bad. They finished 27th in the league. But I actually don't think they're going to be dead last. I'm reserving dead last in the Eastern Conference for Detroit City FC. They come in with a lot of excitement. They were the most kind of hyped Nisa team of all time. In fact, people are arguing that their departure from Nisa spells the end of the league as they know it, or period. But I think, there's kind of that punch in the teeth, welcome to the show, son, kind of moment that you experience. I don't think they're ready for this. I think they're used to having very good semi-pro players. And history says that when teams jump from one league to another, whether it be NASL to USL or USL to MLS, usually there's a really cold water wake up where teams are just not ready. And, what Loudon has going for it is they still have a relationship with DC United to loan players up and down. And DC United's a very strong team this year. Detroit City FC does not have that. They are just promoting some guys. And I tried to find out what's on their roster and I couldn't quickly find it. So, I might be totally wrong because I haven't seen what they've got in the boot room, but I'm picking them dead last.
Mark, that's a great one. I was seeing some different things, even from their own fans that were they really were, who's our team, who's our roster kind of things, pretty far along into the preseason. So I kind of think that's going to be the case. But I don't know. I think it's so hard for Loudon to really, and the Red Bulls at this point. They're going to be in complete lame duck status this year. Atlanta United too is interesting. Robbie Mertz, obviously, and the type of players that they're putting into that system. I think that they're going to be, and they were competitive for a playoff spot last year. So I think because of that, I think there's some momentum that they still have. So I don't think we write them off as a last place team. I think they'll be competitive. I think, again, still tough for them to maintain that for 34 games with the type of roster they have and chemistry and all that kind of stuff. But I do think they'll be a little bit better. So I'll go with you, Mark. I'll go with Detroit City for sure. All right. So USL, let's next. Who the most impressive non-USL, non-Riverhounds player in the USL that's still out there? I know we've lost a few. Forrest Lasso is gone overseas to play for Tampa, left Tampa, but there's still some really good ones around. I'll just throw this out there. The guy that just got hurt recently, Cameron Lancaster's, I think he's just a cold-blooded finisher. I know we have the Riverhounds have Dane Kelly here in Pittsburgh now, but and he's got the record, but I think Cameron Lancaster's the guy I always look at as really one of the best players. Jordan.
I'm gonna go with Haji Berry, leading goal scorer last season. Had, I believe, 25 goals, 5 assists in 33 games. So, he was the one-man machine there. He carried them to the playoffs, Colorado, but I don't think they might have won one playoff game, and that was it. But yeah, he's impressive what he can do there by himself. I know he scored a lot of penalty kicks, but very good player.
Matt?
Well, a couple of years ago, I would have said Didier Drogba when he was with Phoenix, spending time with that club, because I just remember what a massive head-turning moment that was for USL and for that franchise in particular. That was interesting to see him there. But to sort of tie it into the Riverhounds, I personally have always had a soft spot for Nico Brett, just because of his background, just, he and I both have some RMU ties, so there's that. And we all, think fondly of him when we think of his time, I think, in Pittsburgh. And he was a player that, when he went on to Birmingham, I was always kind of keeping an eye on him to see how he was doing. And he acquitted himself very well with Legion before moving on to New Mexico this offseason. And you better believe that I have that Hounds road fixture at New Mexico circled on my calendar anyway. That should be a fun one for multiple reasons, including Nico's presence.
Definitely. Mark?
Sebastian Guenzati out of Tampa Bay. I mean, they're just a fun team all around. They're just so deep. They've got Steven Dos Santos along that line also. The loss I didn't know that Forrest Lasso left. His loss is a big one, but Tampa Bay just chalks it up every year as a top 3 in the table team, and it's really impressive. And Guenzati's have been a big piece of that. So also, I don't know about you guys watching away games, but I love watching away games there. The kids rolling down the hill on the far end of the stadium, the sea views, the fact that it could be really miserably cold at the beginning of spring here in Pittsburgh, and it looks like everyone's in shorts and t-shirts in Florida. And I'm thinking to myself, this might be the year I should probably buy a plane ticket and go to Florida for the first time ever. That's just what I think about when I think of any Tampa Bay team. But Guenzati's just a really talented player. He snuck in under the wire. I mean, Cameron Lancaster and Russell Cicerone, banged in a ton of goals last year, but Guenzati had 21. I mean, he was really, really good. So, and he'll probably run it back again this year. So we'll see.
Maybe the Riverhounds should set up something where the kids roll down from Mount Washington down to Highmark Stadium.
That's not a bad idea.
I've seen people they used to have that kid zone behind where the Paul Child stand is, but now Paul Child stand is so large that you can't even have that. So
no kids allowed.
No kids allowed. Well, it's all about the kids. Come on now, Mark. I want to go back real quick. You made a point about transition, Detroit City, and I lost my train of thought. But I remember Tampa's first year in USL and Indy 11. They both came over from NASL, and they kind of struggled that first year in USL Championship. So just wanted to add to that point you made. All right, so let's look at which teams will make the playoffs in the USL. Eastern Conference. Let's focus on the Eastern Conference. There's just too many teams for us to digest with the West. But in the Eastern Conference, so who do you like? I think it's the top 8 again that finish. But at least just give us your top. Who do you think will be that top 4 to 8 teams? You don't have to give us all 8, but let's start with you, Jordan.
I definitely say. At least in our division, particularly, definitely Tampa Bay again. The Riverhounds. I think the Miami FC as well as Charlotte Independence. I think Hartford drops back.
Charlotte's out. They relegated.
Oh, they did.
League One. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they were still on the website.
Of course they were, because it's the USL Championships website. All right.
Raj League.
Unless I'm just wrong, which I could be. And I don't know. Maybe the Indy 11. And Louisville City. Definitely them. Yeah. Those are just some few to name.
Well, I don't think the USL, to be fair to Jordan, I don't think the USL Championship is quite the garage league that sometimes the Steel Army Twitter account likes to promote it as. But that being said, the fact that Charlotte Independence has moved down, it's been pretty quiet. I thought was interesting is that we really didn't cover this as much in the offseason, but the fact that their roster, the Riverhounds benefited from that. Obviously, if Dane Kelly's contract went void and they were able to jump in. So I just wanted to add that. Matt, what are your thoughts on who do you think are going to be in the top tier of the USL Championships Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I'll say for my top 4 in order, I'll go with Tampa Bay, then Louisville, then the Riverhounds, then Birmingham to round out my top four. And I know Louisville just suffered a key injury recently, but I mean, it's Louisville. To me, they're the Zach Morris of USL. They're the rich kid you knew in high school that everything always seemed to break for at the exact right time. They're going to find a way to be back up there and be in the conversation at the end of the year. But I like the Riverhounds a good solid third, and without question, a playoff team with room to spare. As far as other teams that might sneak into the playoffs and sort of the bottom of that, and then in that next tier of teams, I think Charleston Battery, when they play against us, they impress me anyway.
New coaching staff this year.
Yeah, new kits too, which I think we're going to talk about at some point, maybe. But yeah, they could sneak in as like a 7 or an 8, and I am interested to see how Indy does with their new coach. The Riverhounds may or may not have gotten their last coach fired in the middle of last season, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's I'm feeling pretty good about that top four, and I think definitely Pittsburgh is a team that's built to be in that mix and hosting getting a home playoff game. God willing, this year we get a playoff game and no instances of fate conspiring against us as it did a few months ago.
All right, Mark, who do you like?
The top three teams are kind of solid. It's Tampa, it's Pittsburgh. I think that third really solid team is probably Louisville City, despite the injury. And then there's two more teams that I like a lot that I think, one we've slept on because they're moving over from the Western Conference, if I'm not mistaken, which is, one of those two teams is Miami. Miami, who had a really good season last year, and then the other team is Tulsa. So that's the top 5 teams I have. Tulsa had a pretty solid season last year. I think they finished 4th in the Western Conference. And then after that, it's a total scrum. I mean, I kind of feel like we don't, Hartford underwhelmed last year, but they've been impressive in little fits and spurts, and they've been difficult for the Hounds to play every year. So I feel like they could break the right way if they pick up 3 or 4 of the right guys. I think Atlanta too, and Memphis and Birmingham are all kind of in that mix for that kind of lower tier, kind of like mid-table, maybe makes the playoffs, along with Charleston. Indy 11 have been kind of bumpy since a couple of years ago when they were really solid. So, and I just don't know what to make of them as a team, because for a while they felt like the MLS, the next MLS team going, and I don't know whether their trajectory continues in that direction. If their trajectory had continued in that direction, they would have dominated last year. They would have spent on some players. They would have kind of started to make big moves and splashy, pronouncements and so on. But other than, drop really cool kits, I haven't been impressed with Indy 11.
They are pretty nice.
3 seasons. Yeah, those Indy 500 kits they had with the checkerboard black and white pattern. I was like, why can't we have that? But if it's between being good at soccer and having a cool kit, I'll take being good at soccer every time.
Well, there's a segue. I will say, pretty much, I think we're all on the same page in terms of what teams are going to be at the kind of that top 4. I think we all agree. I think the Hounds will be 1 or 2. I really do. I think there'll be 1 or 2, depending on how things break, with neck and neck with Louisville City. I think Tampa is really good, but I don't know about, they were a defensive stalwart. They have a new goalkeeper. They've lost their their best defender in Forrest Lasso. So I'm curious. I mean, yeah, I think they're going to be a top 4 team, but there might be a little bit of a drop off there. Because I think if teams, one of the things that Orange County did was they kind of exposed them a little bit, beating them a certain style of play. So it will be interesting to see what happens there. But I kind of like Louisville City and the Hounds going at it all year long, neck and neck. And Tampa being 3rd. So that's kind of the way I see that. And then, like, I'm with all of you. I think that the rest is, I think Miami has got the talent. Can they keep it together? Then can they have the chemistry? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think Birmingham is definitely a well organized they have a good organization. Jay Heaps knows what he's doing, and I think that they're poised to be in that conversation in the top 4. And then, really it's a scrum from there. I really do. I don't know much about Tulsa. I think we'll all learn a little bit more about Tulsa this year. Very interesting that they get Oklahoma City and Tulsa in the same state, but they're in different conferences. So weird. But that's the USL for you. So, but yeah, all right. So let's wrap it up. We'll get a couple kind of final parting shots. I did want to talk about which team, like one team that we all think will come out of the Eastern Conference. But before we do that, segue into Mark's best kits. So let's go with the team with the best uniform wins today. I have a soft spot for the Red Bulls. I love that kit. I love the Red Bull, the way that's all set up, all red, the white. I just like that, the Red Bulls on the front of the jersey. Maybe I'm a native New Yorker, that's part of it, but I don't know. I kind of like, and they're not my team or anything, but I just kind of like that kit. That's always been my thing. Jordan.
I don't know. I'm not a uniform guy. I'll be honest.
Come on. You got to pick a winner of the Eastern Conference too. So
I'm gonna say the classic blue and white Riverhounds jersey from like 10 years ago.
So you were the one, like the one person on Twitter that voted for the blue dog logo?
Yeah, I'll say that. And they need to bring back saying unleash randomly throughout the game. The PA guy.
Pop Chalk says, what's your favorite kit?
Well, I'm the opposite. I am a jersey geek, and I have a couple that I like. I like Miami's just because it's a very Floridian, color scheme, and it reminds me of, the Dolphins and the Marlins, and it's a uniform that's very indicative of the part of the country that the team plays in. I like. I'll admit that I like Louisville. I think purple's a very underrated sports uniform color. Of course, you got the Pittsburgh Maulers coming back, so we're going to be spoiled by teams wearing purple pretty soon. But Louisville has a very regal, very classy look, I think, with those purple kits. And when I look at Hartford's, they're another one that, when I see the green and the blue, I immediately think of the Whalers. I think of Brass Bonanza, and being a hockey guy. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there. There's a few that I think are all kind of equally strong.
All right, Mark, your last. You kind of talked about Indy 11, but are there any other kits you like?
For sure. It's hard not to get caught up in like what's your favorite color. Like this is like basically what kindergartners do, which is really fun on some level. Like you get a bunch of grown men sitting around drinking IPAs in an evening in their basements and talking about what's your favorite color, and we call it a podcast. It's amusing. I was gonna say, and this is gonna be silly because there are colors, but the way Charleston Battery pulls off yellow and black is really great. They've been doing 6 vertical stripes, I think last year, and I think probably their primary this year. And then they had some like red piping thrown in there too. And then if I'm not mistaken, their front jersey sponsor this year, or maybe it was last year, maybe it's both, I don't know, is Volvo. And the font looks really nice and it's very clean. They look very, very good. Very, very good. And I think that's really fun. Shout out though, not really per se talking about the colors and the kit, but for those of you who are new to this team in USL, the Detroit City crest is gorgeous. It's maybe one of the most unique crests, I will say, in soccer, because they took like some sort of icon who's on like the Detroit City, one of the bridges or something, or maybe it's on the mayor's office or something, and they like worked that into, and it's this dude with a trumpet, and it's very like
awesome Motown.
It's very cool. It's very AS Roma.
Love it. All right, so real quick, everybody, your prediction for who comes out of the Eastern Conference. We're talking after the I mean, if you want to share who you think is maybe a different regular season top of the table, but I'm talking about when the smoke clears in November, who's going to be playing in the USL Cup? Mark.
It's going to be us. It's going to be our year. We're not going to finish first in the league. We've learned that that's not the way to win the USL East in the playoffs. No, you want to kind of like keep it on the DL and show up in like fourth and then just rumble through the playoffs as long as nobody gets sick with anything and they don't cancel the final altogether. It's going to be the Riverhounds, baby. And, you know, we're all going to have to buy our tickets to, you know, Phoenix or Las Vegas, or God help us if we go to Las Vegas, because most of Steel Army will either be so hammered or so broke by game time, most of them won't even be there.
Well, they've already got a game in Las Vegas early in the season, halfway through the season, or April or something.
Big trouble.
We're already in trouble. They're already in trouble. We just got to keep the Hounds players. Bob will have to have us very specific. You know, they're staying out in the desert somewhere, you know, that night before. Matt, what do you think about who do you like coming walking into the USL Cup final on ESPN?
Well, to be the man, you have to beat the man, and Tampa Bay is still the man until proven otherwise. But I think, like Mark said, if there were ever a year where the Riverhounds could be the man and could, you know, knock a team like, or, you know, hope Louisville, they finally get their shot at those guys off their lofty postseason perch, this could be the year. So I'm sort of by default leaning Tampa just because of, you know, the overall consistency of that team and their ability to make it to the final the last couple of years. But you know, I like Mark said, this could be it. This could be the year that we see a Pittsburgh team get in there, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope this is the year.
Cool. I'm going to be a homer and say us as well. I wouldn't have said that the past couple of years, but I truly do think they're a pretty solid team this year from everything I've heard, everything I've seen. And if there's a second team to pick, I'd say Louisville, but I do think in Lily's fifth year here that we're finally going to break through. I think it's finally time.
Wow, I think we have a consensus here. I really do, and I you know, I'm leaning at first or second place regular season finish. I do think that first home playoff game will be key. I think after that it doesn't really matter. I think they get that one under their belt. But as long as they don't play Louisville in the first round, I think they should be fine. And I think, and this is the thing, it's the talent level, the depth, you know, who's playing well in the postseason. It's all a crapshoot once you get to the playoffs, and it's a battle of attrition, and a lot of times you go into extra time, and the Hounds were this close in some respect. Didn't play that great in their loss to Louisville in 2019, but you know, they were still a Nico Brett goal away from early in the second half, away from probably closing that game out at 2-1 or 2-0. I really believe that. So it's as Bill Cowher used to say, is a fine line. And I think this year, I think the Hounds have, I think it's the key is the intangibles and the depth. And that was the one thing against Louisville City in 2019 that I think where they fell short was they didn't have the depth. And even against Bethlehem Steel the year before in the playoffs, it just seemed like Bethlehem Steel had players coming off the bench who just brought something into that game. And the Hounds Bob just did not go to his bench. And he's shown that in 2019. He showed that in 2020 in the playoffs. Every time not going to his bench because he only trusted a short group of players. And I think this year his goal is to trust a bigger group of players that he can bring off the bench, to have an Albert Dikwa or a Dane Kelly to pull off the bench and maybe kind of come in as the second wave of forward. I mean, just that alone. We've already talked about the center back depth and the midfield interchangeability with some of these players. I think there's a lot of depth on this team, at least on paper. It looks that way this year. So because of that, I think this is the best chance that they have to win a title. And I am going to go say it. I didn't think I would say it. I never have said it before. So I'm saying it now. I really do think this is the team that will finally get over the hump, at least at this point, ahead of the season opener this week. All right, so that wraps up our little roundtable rapid fire. We went rapid fire for 50 minutes, but it was a lot of fun. We've got a lot to look forward to in the coming, obviously, next few days leading up to the Hounds the opener at Memphis. And Mark, you will provide a scouting report for Pittsburgh Soccer Now on Memphis. He's going to be cracking doing the research right now as he right after we leave this. Here and Jordan, looking forward to seeing you at Highmark Stadium. Matt, your insights are always greatly appreciated. I know you kind of have a little bit more of the, the perspective of, the passion that comes from the Paul Child stand, and we appreciate having that here as well. So, guys, my pleasure to get this season off and running with a fun forum tonight. And thanks again for joining me. Have a great night.
See you, everybody.
You too, Judd. Thanks for having us.
All right. Good night. All right, guys.